In today's video, we're going to take a look at the entire anime Enchanting Tales archive, if you want to call it that, for Wilds of Eldraine, and take a look at the value to see whether or not they hit or missed on this whole subset. So let's jump into the video. Thanks everybody for checking out the video. If you guys do enjoy the video, please hit the like button and subscribe to the channel. Click the bell icon if you want to stay notified for all up-to-date videos when they're posted. And of course, I encourage you to leave a comment down below. Let me know your thoughts on the entirety of today's video topic. Plus, August is over in 2 days. If you guys haven't had a chance yet to join the channel membership, you can scan the QR code and do so. Any channel members in August will receive a free Magic the Gathering booster pack that will be announced, the details of which in early September. So if you want to join and still have the opportunity to get that, time is running out. Now, today we are going to be talking about Wilds of Eldraine's Enchanting Tales anime subset. Now, there are 64 cards, I believe, that are in the set entirely. But only 20 of them have anime art variants, and that's what we're focusing on today, because I think there's a lot of hype around some of these, and a lot of them are pretty good reprints, and some of them have just fantastic artwork as well. We've covered some of them going, in the daily videos. We're doing the daily updates and stuff, but now I just kind of want to take a look at them from like a value perspective and sort of analyze the entirety of this archetype and see whether or not it's going to, be a hit, like many people considered Strixhaven's Mythical Archive to be a hit, and Brothers War Retro Artifact maybe it was a little bit lackluster if you don't count the serialized stuff, but it's still interesting. So, yeah, we're going to jump right into it. And so there's 20 cards total, and we're going to take a look at them all. The way these are working, as far as I understand, is you can pull these in set, draft, and collector boosters. So it'll be available in any of the boosters. It's just obviously going to be more likely, I think, to pop up in collector boosters. But it's pretty cool that they didn't limit these to one specific booster type. There is a confetti foil variant of some of these that is going to have like a sparkly confetti approach. That will be exclusive to collector boosters. So, I mean, that's fine if that's, something you're into, but at least everybody's going to have a chance to get the cards that they're interested in. Now, first up, we've got Greater Auramancy, and with all the enchantment love lately with Commander Masters and this set's Commander decks, this is definitely a really good reprint. It is 1 and a white enchantment. Other enchantments you control have Shroud, and then enchanted creatures you control have Shroud. So basically a must-include for any enchantment deck that can play it, and it is an extremely good card with some absolutely awesome artwork. Before this reprint announcement, this card was selling around $30, so definitely a good choice. Whether or not the actual card is going to drop significantly remains to be seen. I imagine the Tapestry version, the non-anime version, will probably drop a decent amount, but I do think this one will probably hold a pretty solid price tag, just because, again, it's a good card, it doesn't have a lot of prints, and it has some really, really cool artwork that I think is going to appeal to a lot of people. So it's definitely a win on Greater Auramancy for me. Now, Karmic Justice is another one with some absolutely badass artwork. This is 2 and a white. Is enchantment. Whenever a spell or ability an opponent controls destroys a non-creature permanent you control, you may destroy target permanent that opponent controls. Artwork aside, this card is about $10 before reprint announcement, and it is only a rare in the subset, so it'll be a little bit more common than some of the others, but artwork alone on this is just an absolute win, and it's a cool card. It definitely has a place in certain decks. I think it's a decent enough inclusion. It wasn't like the most expensive, but certainly better than, a bulk rare or something getting that treatment. A $10 reprint is still better than a lot of other alternatives. Land Tax is another one that we just got a reprint for in Commander Masters, and they've doubled down on it again. The artwork here is actually pretty cool. I do like it, and this card was $25-ish before the reprint announcement, going off of what the Commander Masters version is selling for. Obviously, those two were pretty close together, but the price didn't drop a ton with the Commander Masters reprint, so maybe a double dip here will bring it down. I do think it'll eventually end up settling around, 18 to 20. But again, Land Tax is one of those cards that's definitely a good reprint. It definitely benefits from the double dip. And I just don't think it's going to keep the price down all that long, realistically speaking. I think we're already kind of seeing some of that kind of pushback from Commander Masters. Some of those cards that were bottomed out have already gone back up a little bit. So yeah, you can get them a bit cheaper, but I don't think it's going to be anything crazy like some people might have been thinking it would be. Smothering Tithe is another one. I'm not a huge fan of this artwork, but I know people love it. It's Smothering Tithe is just, a really, really powerful card in Commander. It is arguably one of the best enchantments in the format as a whole, and this artwork is going to appeal to people. It was just reprinted as a Mythic in Commander Masters and is settled around $17 to $20. This one is pre-selling at $50 plus, obviously, because of the art variant. I do think this one's going to end up commanding a pretty high price tag for its anime variant, probably in the $50 range for the regular. Maybe it'll drop a bit, but the foil will likely be pretty high. Again, just the artwork and the appeal to certain people, as well as the confetti foil of this, I think is going to be absolutely wild. So Just one of those cards that I think is a good reprint. I mean, I'm not going to complain about another accessible version of Tithe, but I don't think the inclusion in this subset will really do too much for its price. And this premium version, if you will, is going to definitely be a hot ticket item. As foretold, might be the first kind of miss here. Before the reprint announcement, it was about $4, so definitely not a super high demand card. Not terrible, but not the rare you'd want to see, especially if you pull one of these anime things. I mean, unless you really like the artwork, but I think this will be one you could probably just buy pretty darn cheap, even for the regular kind of version, because I'm fairly certain it's like $3 or $4 for this version as well on TCG Player pre-orders, and the set's not even out yet. So not really much of a great reprint. I mean, I guess again, still better than a 25-cent card, but other than that, it doesn't exactly have too much going for it in that sense. Kindred Discovery, I did talk about this one a while back. This is a pretty good reprint with some amazing artwork here. This card actually was pretty cheap for a while after its Baldur's Gate reprint, and then went back up significantly to about 15 to 20 bucks. It's about 15 now before the reprint announcement came out, so I think it's a decent, option. And they did make it a mythic here as well, so it's not going to pop up too commonly, but a really good card for tribal decks especially, and just a pretty solid inclusion. I mean, at first I was a little bit like, but realizing how much it had gone up, I'm kind of in support of the reprint decision here. So I think it's a good one. I do think this will probably settle around 10 to 12 bucks, hopefully. But we'll have to see, because again, it just really depends on how commonly stuff is actually pulled and how accessible it is. Omniscience is another really good card, obviously, for blue. Cast spells without paying mana costs. It was about 10 bucks before the reprint. It had been in one of the decks, maybe it was Pioneer decks like 1 or 2 years ago. I don't remember exactly when, but a good card, and the artwork here is really cool. I do think there is something to be said about the appeal of the anime artwork to a lot of people that may do something to actually put a premium on some of these cards more than it would normally if it was just like some fancy variant reprint. I think people really, really like this art style, and some of these cards are going to have widespread appeal because of that. The good thing is the tapestry versions of a lot of these will probably be a lot cheaper, so if you're just looking for reprints, it's obviously still possible. But I don't know. We've never really seen this. I mean, we saw it with Jumpstart 22 a little bit with some of the anime variants, and those, even for cards that aren't super played, did better than other cards in, a similar slot would have. So we'll have to see. I think the confetti foiling on a lot of these anime arts are going to end up being, in demand. I won't put a price tag out there yet, because I very much could be wrong on what the price ends up being, but I think there will be a demand for sure. Omniscience is good. It's a solid reprint, solid inclusion, and just a good card in general. Perhaps one of the best is Rhystic Study. This card is insanely good and insanely popular. About $33 before the reprint. Last time it had been printed was in Jumpstart 22, and it really didn't make much of a dent in the price at all. So just kind of hoping that it'll maybe do it this time around. But I don't know. This feels like one of those cards that may always stay high. Again, great artwork, amazing confetti foiling here. The This version is not going to drop below 30, I don't think. I would be very, very surprised if it did. I mean, I guess it would be a good thing for the player base, but I just don't think it's going to. But you may be able to find the other version a little bit less if you shop around and snag deals while they exist. So obviously this one's a home run reprint. There's not really much else to say about it. Bitter Blossom. Don't care for the art too much myself, but I definitely do like the reprint. This was reprinted in Double Masters 2022 and settled around $21. That's the price before the reprint announcement, so not bad. Just a card that, has not been printed super widespread over the past, say, 5 years or so. But, it's been accessible from time to time. So it's not the most expensive, but it's definitely another card good to keep in circulation. And with the Fairy Commander deck coming out and Fairy Tribal getting a lot more power, I do think this card it's a good time for it to get a reprint before, any potential price spike happens. So it was smart, and it's a good move, and I'm happy to see it. Grave Pact is a double dip reprint, of course, was just in Commander Masters. It settled around $12 at the cheapest version, but now you've got this incredible artwork here and just the other version of it too. I do think, again, this is probably going to end up being worth a little bit for its alternate version, but the regular card itself should probably settle around 10, so you will be able to get Grave Pact pretty inexpensive if it's something that you want to play. It's a good inclusion. I'm still a little bit on the fence about some of the double dip reprints that were on the lower end, because it takes value out of Commander Masters, and sort of like right after that set came out. It doesn't exactly send the best message to the player base that, like, you're going to buy stuff and then it might just get reprinted shortly after. But still, for some cards, specifically like Rhystic Study and Land Tax and whatnot, the reprints are always going to be welcome. Necropotence is another solid reprint here. I think this was last reprinted in the Secret Lair for the 30th anniversary. About 20 bucks before the reprint at the cheapest, and this is extremely, extremely good as a card, and the artwork here is great. This is one of the few I actually like the tapestry art version better, for whatever that's worth. So just another good inclusion here, and a generically solid card for black in various different combos. So I'm happy to see that one without a doubt. I think it's a good hit. Polluted Bonds, another artwork that I think is going to be really popular. Also just a really good card that I think only has one other mainline printing other than this. It was about $25 before this reprint announcement, so this is a big one, and this is only a rare, so this should actually be readily accessible comparatively to the mythics, and I think, you know, I think it's probably gonna drop a bit just because now and more are in circulation, but I don't know, again, it's just it's gonna be kind of hard to say, but I don't think I'd be upset to pull this card, so that's sort of a positive to look at. And the market trends on a lot of this stuff once the set's actually out will definitely be really interesting to watch, in my opinion. Aggravated Assault is a really, really good card that I am shocked it was actually $35 at the cheapest before reprint. I thought it was less. I might have been confusing it with a different card, but that's definitely a good inclusion here, especially just at rare. Obviously really good in commander decks that want to like utilize multiple combat phases and things of that nature, and it's just a really powerful card with some cool artwork. I don't know where this will settle. I would imagine, you know, now that it's been printed again, it'll settle lower at some point, but we'll have to see, because this one is much more than I personally thought it was. We got Blood Moon. This one has been printed pretty consistently every other year for the most part. Still a really good card, but what does it here for me is the artwork. Massive Castlevania vibes. I think this artwork is beautiful. Card itself was around 11 before the reprint announcement, so it was never super expensive. I imagine that this one's going to command a decent price just because of how fucking awesome it looks, but it's also possible that it may just not be the most high demand. It's pretty accessible, but I hope that the premium version gets a little bit of value just because it deserves it. I mean, that artwork alone, it makes this card worth owning if it's something you're going to play. So absolutely gorgeous card, and a good inclusion here for a mid-level card. And next up, we've got Defense of the Heart. This is a pretty good one as well, with not a ton of prints, but again, really cool artwork. A good card for green strategies, and, you know, being able to bring stuff out pretty easily in decks like, you know, Eldrazi or other big cost stompy type decks is definitely a good look for this card. So I think it's actually pretty strong, and another solid inclusion here as we go along. Repercussions, when we talked about a bit ago, another really good enchantment that doesn't really have any other prints, and is about $21 before reprint, so a really solid option here. I don't know how much play it sees, but it's still good to have it, and with the enchantment love that's coming out lately, it's definitely not a bad alternative. Sneak Attack is actually relatively cheap, was reprinted in Dominaria Remastered, but this is another one with like A+ artwork. Absolutely just really, really nice card design, and it's a good card that certainly can further certain combos in Commander. I don't know that it sees play in any other formats, but I could be wrong on that. I don't think this is going to be super expensive either, but the artwork is pretty cool, so at least if you're interested in that and collecting that, you shouldn't have too hard of a time. Now, of course, Doubling Season is probably the biggest one in here. I've talked about this artwork. I absolutely adore this artwork. I think it's amazing. I definitely want to own this version of this card. It was about 50 before the reprint. Commander Masters did bring it down from about 70 to like 40. It started to kind of bubble back up to 50. This is just a gem of a card, man. I think this is a great inclusion. I'm very happy with the double dip, because Doubling Season is such a strong card that no matter how many reprints it gets, it ends up going back up in price, and it's just so key to so many combos in Commander that like enhance your deck. So I think this is a win, obviously. Just a beautiful art. Love this card. I am hoping I can get one. I just don't know where it's going to go price-wise, realistically speaking, because the other Borderless Doubling Season we have from a few years ago is still very pricey, and this one might even be harder to pull, given that it's limited in one slot in the set. So we'll have to see, but I think Doubling Season's an absolute win. Nature's Will is another pretty good card, about 12 bucks before reprint. Definitely good for green as a whole. And the artwork is pretty cool, so it's good. It's a good inclusion. I mean, nothing to really complain. Sometimes you need to slot those mid-level cards in there. And then arguably the best reprint in this set is Parallel Lives, just about $45-ish before the reprint. Not only is the artwork incredible, but this card just never had a reprint outside of a Judge promo, so it was getting up there in price. It wasn't quite as high as Doubling Season because arguably it's not as good, but in terms of the best choice for reprint and really kind of including those in the same set here, I think Parallel Lives is absolutely a really, really strong inclusion. And overall, these 20 cards are pretty damn solid overall. There's not a single card in here that's like terrible, even As Foretold, which is a bit on the lower end in terms of like appeal. For the anime style archetype here, there's not a single one of these that would be like an absolutely terrible hit that you'd be like, oh man, this is horrible. So there is that nice, you know, approach of of that going on. And I think overall it's just a pretty darn good set. I think it's constructed pretty well. Obviously, there's things we'll have to see with the pull rates and everything, but I do think that it's just going to be pretty solid as a whole.